So, Helligeddon is here, and like many of you, I have received my copy and finished reading Lady Death, Chapter 19, Demonic Omens. And what an excellent setup it has been so far. 2024 is honestly just speeding right along, and as of this video, we are already in the midst of Chapter 20, Lady Death, Eternal Sabbath. And I bring this up because Brian has recently, and honestly for I'd say about a year or so, mentioned the character Madam Midnight. Now, either expressing interest in the possibility of the character getting her own book in the future, primarily that she will be playing an important role within Lady Death's ongoing story, starting here with Eternal Sabbath. And when it comes to Lady Death characters, Madam Midnight is perhaps a bit lesser known, so as we excitedly await to see how Lady Death's next chapter will unfold, I figured why don't we go over everything we know about Madam Midnight thus far, as we will soon come to know the character even more in the future. What's going on, everyone? This is Ace, and welcome back to The Reckoning, where we talk all things chaos and Coffin comics. And today, as mentioned earlier, we are basically going to consolidate and go over everything we know thus far about the character Madam Midnight, as it sounds like we should be gearing up for her presence to have a strong impact on the Lady Death universe going forward into 2025. But before we get too carried away, don't forget to give the video a like, hit that subscribe button, click the bell as well so that you can stay up to date with all Lady Death and Coffin comics content that we have in store for you. And without further ado, let's begin. So as I've already let you know, Madam Midnight is a relatively new character, so there really isn't much to go by at this time. Her actual name was never actually officially stated within the comics until the most recent chapter, Chapter 19, where we do get confirmation that her official first name would be Madeline. Before this, we kind of had to assume or guess her name, and what I did to figure this out was I combined basically two incidences that happened within the stories of Lady Death, starting with, because it was made known to us by none other than Lady Death, that Madam Midnight is the sister to the powerful voodoo queen Rada Beauregard. Now, that's how I pieced together her last name, and it wouldn't be until the later chapters where the sisters interact with each other, and Rada refers to her sister as Maddie, which she replies that nobody calls her Maddie anymore. And then as mentioned prior in the most recent chapter, she is referred to as Madeline, so Madeline Beauregard is her official name. And the sisters' interaction would actually have been the last time we saw the character of Madam Midnight until the most recently released chapter, Lady Death, Demonic Omens, where we see her and Muanji, the devil hunter, bane of the demonic, working together to hunt down demons and keep track of uprising demonic activities throughout Earth. The two of them have developed a relationship, or at least a partnership, working together, and this time around they actually help rescue Lady Death's son, Hellslinger, from well, let's call it an attack of some kind. I will just let you all read the chapter to find out what happened. But some of you may be like, wait, Ace, hold on. Her sister is a voodoo queen. She is partnered up with a cursed devil hunter named Muaji, who looks more terrifying than the actual demons they track down. They rescue Lady Death's son. Yeah, I know. We got a lot going on here. And so I guess my approach would be to introduce you all to the first time we run into Madam Midnight and tell you her story from there. And to do this, we have to go back to one of my all-time favorite chapters, Chapter 11, Lady Death, Malevolent Decimation. So just for context and to understand what Lady Death's role is within all of the situation, I need to let you know that she and the Sworn, which you could look at as an organization or group of supernatural powerful beings that come together in order to fight against world-ending threats, had just defeated the Trinity, a powerful extinction level trio, which if you want to know more about, then you can just click on my video down below or in the corner there of the many villains that Lady Death has had to fight. But anyways, so the Trinity were defeated, the world saved, and Lady Death had begun to establish a bit of a better relationship with her two children, Hellslinger and Chaotica. But that is over now. A darkness has taken over Lady Death, returning her to the way she was before. Yes. Think Chaos Days, #1, Megadeth will reign, the dead will rise, somebody call the evil one, cause she is back. No, but in all seriousness, yes, it's been several months, and no one has heard from Lady Death. Not the sworn, not her children. Nobody knows what she has been up to. Until now. We are taken to New Orleans, Louisiana, as a car pulls up to a pretty elaborate looking house. Out of the vehicle, two people walk out. One is a man simply named Reggie, and he is essentially a crime boss of sorts within the New Orleans area. He is known to the underworld as the Kingpin of New Orleans, and alongside of him is our Madam Midnight, looking sexy as ever. Reggie is being a bit flirtatious and invites her in for a drink. He tries putting on a front by referring to himself as a humble dry cleaner, but she interrupts him immediately and says, "I'm not one of your party girls, Reggie. I know how you make your money and I'm fine with it. A drink would be nice." As the two make their way to the front door, Madam Midnight stops Reggie as he expresses annoyance that his men aren't guarding the door. There is an eerie uneasiness. The air is thick with dread that it almost is hard to breathe. She tells him, "Don't open the door. Something isn't right." But it's too late. They are greeted to an absolute bloodbath as carcasses and body parts have been thrown around the lowly lit room. And before they can feel anything else but shock or fear, they hear her voice. "Should have listened to her, Reggie. Something definitely isn't right in here." Standing before them is Lady Death, slowly walking down the stairs, taunting Reggie about how his killers for hire clearly were no good. Reggie takes out his gun. "Crazy ass, Reggie, don't. So much arrogance. I want you to die knowing I wasn't even here for you, but I'll put your corpse to good use. I'm no criminal. This has nothing to do with me. I'm no one." Now we both know that's not true. You're Madam Midnight, Hoodoo Princess of New Orleans, seer of the unseen, and I've got plans for you. So let's break this down a bit, and while I'm definitely no expert in voodoo and hoodoo, but seeing how one of Madam Midnight's titles is the Hoodoo Princess, and hoodoo seems to be a set of spiritual practices, traditions, and beliefs that were created by enslaved African Americans in the southern United States from various traditional African spiritualities and elements of indigenous botanical knowledge. She is also gifted with a sense of spiritual sight, since Reggie before his death mentioned that he would not be able to hide anything from Madam Midnight. And also her other title, the Seer of the Unseen, seems to imply that she has spiritual eyesight of some kind, and perhaps has access to a different plane of existence. As for what type of person she is, it's hard to pinpoint, but she is clearly not a stranger to the crime underworld, and she comes across indifferent to wrongdoings. I don't know if I would classify her as a villain, but she isn't really a hero per se, at least at this point in the story. She has seen the rough side of life and plays the cards that life has dealt her. And some of you may be asking, what were these plans that Lady Death had for Madam Midnight? Well, long story short, Lady Death, being consumed by darkness, was planning for Megadeth, but she was needing an emissary just like before to enact this. She had been looking for such a being but with no luck, until she could utilize Madam Midnight and her abilities to find the one she seeks. We are then taken to a scene where Madam Midnight is forced to utilize her powers to find a being known as Devilock, or Johnny when in his human form. And without getting too much into his character, as that will be a video for another time, essentially he is a being who was cursed at birth by a crazed Armageddon cult, and then if that wasn't enough, he apparently was discovered by scientists who did terrible experiments on him, pushing him to almost losing his sanity. Somehow this unspeakable cruelty done to him turned him into a living gateway to 1,000 different netherworlds, which can only be opened when Johnny, aka Devilock, reaches extreme excitement. Madam Midnight is successful in locating Johnny, and it's here where Lady Death is pleased with her services and promises to make her death quick, but still so painful. Before Lady Death executes her, she calmly states, 6 generations of my family have been Hoodoo priestess. I won't tarnish their memory by begging, but let's make a deal. Spare my life and teach me your dark ways, and I'll pledge my loyalty to you. Lady Death agrees, but makes mention that she was so looking forward to slitting that pretty little neck. So we could look at this as Madam Midnight seems to be quick-witted, even in the face of death. She is looking for a deal to make, or essentially a wager in which she can come up on top. We also learned that her hoodoo/voodoo abilities are generationally passed down. Now again, Madam Midnight is not deceiving Lady Death. She full-heartedly is loyal to the Death Goddess. Within this short amount of time, she would assist in the abduction of Johnny, aka Devilock, and his torture. She would lead a cult of lesser witches who were wicked in their own right and worshipped Lady Death. However, Lady Death viewed them as disposable, and Madame Midnight would be the one to kill them for the combined efforts of Lady Death's blood magic and Madame Midnight's spell, both working to break down the walls and barriers Johnny has put up in place within himself so that the demons, devils, or whatever horrible power lies within him would not be unleashed. The combined efforts are just too much for him, and the gate has been opened. So some of you may be asking, okay, so the gate was opened. What does that do exactly? And it would appear that the evil energy or spirits within Johnny or Devilock flow throughout the graveyard. And this was the missing ingredient needed for Lady Death to raise the dead. Devilock asks, what have we done? Something I promised a long time ago. Mega Death. Let's make this whole world one big graveyard. Lady Death's undead army begins the attack on New Orleans. Chaos ensues. I should also mention that these are not just the undead like before, but as I kind of alluded, the remnants of some sort of demons exist within these zombies, making them a bit more vicious and brutal. Now, Madame Midnight, looking at the carnage, happens to say, by Papa Legba's spirit, I've not seen anything so beautiful. Lady Death is impressed with her cruelty. Later, members of the Sworn, Loco and La Muerta, are showing up to stop the zombie invasion when Madame Midnight steps in to greet them. She self-proclaims herself as Hoodoo Queen of New Orleans and declares that the two are trespassing on her territory. Before they can react, she immediately puts them under a curse taught to her by Lady Death. She then mentions that part of the incentive for her working with Lady Death was that Lady Death promised to keep 1,000 humans alive to worship at Madame Midnight's feet. So clearly the idea of being worshipped or at least seen as superior is an idea that attracts Madame Midnight. Perhaps she is someone who enjoys power, which may have been the reason why she was hanging out with the Kingpin of New Orleans. Or maybe she has had a past where she was always upstaged by her sister Rada, which I remind you has the title of Voodoo Queen. And before choosing to live in hell was the leader of the Sworn. But Madame Midnight's inner motives we will have to learn in future chapters. So while it doesn't look good for Loco or La Muerta, under the curse that Madame Midnight has placed on them, La Muerta is able to break free due to her own relationship with Santa Muerte, the deity ever hungry for justicia, who chose Maria Diaz, aka La Muerta, to be her champion and whose powers seem to surpass that of Madame Midnight. La Muerta and Loco are able to take Madame Midnight hostage and try using her as leverage against Lady Death. They demand that if she doesn't call off the undead invasion, that they will put a bullet in Madame Midnight. And the response from Lady Death has to be one of my favorites and absolutely had me dying like the first time I read it. Sarcastically, she states, "Oh no, anything but that. How will I ever bear the loss?" I will tell you a secret. She was going to die anyways, like the rest of you. Just one more lump of dirt in the endless graveyard. The struggle to stop Lady Death continues, and in a last effort, Madame Midnight does try to put Lady Death to sleep, but she is knocked out. Muaji sees this action and decides to protect her from that point on, seeing that she may be worthy of redemption. After Lady Death is awoken from her darkness, she, the Sworn, and the world must deal with the repercussions, and Muaji is getting Madame Midnight to safety because he knows people will be out to get her for her role in the attempted mega death. When she asks why he is helping her, he simply states that when he was at his lowest point, someone helped him. It's time he did the same, but to not make him regret it. Time would pass and we would run into this pair at a later time. Muaji is frustrated because he is starting to not have control over his ability to transform from demon to human form. But Madame Midnight, who seems to again have her calm demeanor, states that demon form or not, she knows his heart and that he was the one to save her, and so she will do everything she can to help him. Say what you will about Madame Midnight, she definitely isn't perfect, but she is so loyal and dedicated when she chooses to be. Unfortunately though, this moment would be interrupted by a progeny, which I will be doing a video on in the future, but essentially they are monstrous children of the all-powerful Insurrectus, which you can learn a little bit about in the video I mentioned earlier, the many villains of Lady Death. Down below or again in the corner. The progeny monstrosity essentially captures the two, for their powers are to be harnessed for Insurrectus's plans to destroy the Infinityverse, aka the name given to the multiverse within Lady Death's chapters. After being freed from capture, they would join not only the Sworn, but the many armies of the different universes to defeat Insurrectus and his progeny. Now, it would be much later till we get the most recent chapter of Lady Death, where we finally see Madame Midnight and Muaji still together and arriving just in time to rescue Hellslinger. And that is everything we know about the character so far. She is definitely a flawed, powerful being who definitely seems to have the ability to tap into a darker side. She is no angel, but as of now seems to be trying to atone and make things right. She has an attraction to power and also a steady calmness to her even in the face of death. She is faithful to the Leo Papa Legba and does seem to have respect for her sister. It will be exciting to see what plans Brian and Mike have in store for Madame Midnight and what role she is going to be playing in Hellageddon, as well as Lady Death's continued stories. But let me know your guys' thoughts on the character down below, or perhaps other character rundowns you'd like to see in the future. We covered a lot of ground, but trust me when I tell you that there is so much more to these stories and tales, so don't forget to grab your issues of Lady Death, La Muerta, Lady Satanis, and much more over at Coffin Comics. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, I am Ace, and this is The Reckoning. And until next time, take care.